The medical bay of the starship synthesis hummed with quiet efficiency. Dr. Kethara's crystal body sparkled under the soft lights as she reviewed the day's research notes. Her team had been studying human biology for 3 months now, and she still found the primitive species fascinating in their simplicity. Their bones break so easily, she muttered to herself, tapping her crystalline fingers on the data pad, and their organs are so fragile. How did they ever survive long enough to reach the stars? The Vorthak physician had seen many species in her 200 years of practice. Her own people were made of living crystal that could regrow damaged sections. The gaseous Etherians could simply reform their misty bodies when injured. Even the plant-like Sylvari could regrow entire limbs given enough sunlight and water. But humans? They seemed designed to break. Dr. Zixenil drifted into the room, his translucent form shimmering like morning mist. "Any new insights about our human guests?" he asked, his voice echoing strangely through his gaseous body. "Still trying to understand how they function at all," Kethara replied. "Their healing process is so slow and they can't regrow lost parts. I am amazed their species survived to develop space travel." Before Zixenil could respond, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The lights shifted to harsh red as the ship's computer announced, "Gravity generator malfunction. All personnel brace for emergency." The ship lurched violently to one side. Through the medical bay's reinforced windows, they could see sparks flying from the engineering section. Something had gone terribly wrong. "Medical emergency in Engineering Bay 7, came an urgent voice over the communication system. "We need all medical teams immediately." Kethara's crystal form brightened with concern. Engineering Bay 7 was where the human crew members worked. Her team grabbed their emergency medical kits and rushed toward the damaged section of the ship. The scene that greeted them was devastating. A massive plasma conduit had exploded, sending metal debris flying in all directions. The blast had torn through 3 separate bulkheads, leaving twisted metal and sparking electrical systems everywhere. Emergency force fields flickered as they tried to contain the damage. "Where is the injured crew member?" Kethara called out to the emergency teams already on scene. A reptilian saurian engineer pointed toward a pile of collapsed metal beams with his clawed hand. Human Chief Engineer Marcus Chen was caught in the blast. "He went through those 3 walls and ended up under that debris. We're trying to figure out how to move the wreckage without causing more damage." Kethara felt her crystal structure dim with sadness. No organic being could survive such trauma. She had seen the force of the explosion and the weight of the collapsed beams. The human would certainly be dead, probably in several pieces. "We'll need to prepare the body for transport to his family," she told her team quietly. This level of trauma would be instant death for any known species. They carefully approached the wreckage, scanning for life signs. What they found made no sense at all. "Doctor," called Dr. Veltar, a spider-like arachnoid whose 8 legs allowed him to climb over the debris safely. "I'm reading a heartbeat." "Impossible," Kethara said, but she moved closer with her own scanning equipment. "The readings must be wrong." That's when they heard it. A weak but distinctly human voice coming from beneath tons of twisted metal. "Hello? Is someone there?" The voice was strained and obviously in pain, but it was definitely conscious and coherent. "This is really embarrassing, but I seem to be stuck." The entire medical team froze in shock. Kethara's crystal body flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme confusion among her people. This was impossible. The human should be dead. Very, very dead. "Sir, please don't try to move," she called out, her training taking over despite her disbelief. "We're going to get you out of there." "Oh, good," came the reply, followed by what sounded like a chuckle. "I was starting to worry nobody would find me. Though I have to say this beats the time I got buried in that avalanche on Titan. At least it's warm in here." Dr. Zixenil's gaseous form rippled with confusion. Did he just make a joke about being crushed under debris? The rescue took over an hour. They had to carefully cut through support beams and move massive chunks of metal while monitoring the human's vital signs. Throughout the entire process, Marcus Chen kept talking. "You know," his voice drifted up from the wreckage. "This reminds me of a story my grandfather used to tell. He was a miner back on Earth, and one time the whole tunnel collapsed on him and his team. They were trapped for 6 days before rescue teams could dig them out." Kethara was busy directing the cutting tools, but she couldn't help listening. "What happened to them?" "Oh, they all survived. Granddad said the worst part wasn't being trapped underground. It was that they ran out of coffee on the 3rd day. He always said you could survive anything as long as you had good coffee. When they finally cleared enough debris to see the human, the medical team stood in stunned silence. Marcus Chen was pinned from the waist down by a massive metal beam. His left arm was bent at an impossible angle, clearly broken in multiple places. Blood covered most of his uniform, and his breathing was labored and painful. Any other species would have been dead hours ago, but Marcus was not only alive, he was smiling at them. "Hey there," he said weakly, giving them a little wave with his good hand. "Thanks for coming to get me. Sorry about all the trouble." Dr. Kethara had to steady herself against a piece of debris. In all her years of medical practice, she had never seen anything like this. The human's injuries were severe enough to kill a dozen members of most species, yet he was conscious, coherent, and somehow maintaining a positive attitude. "How?" she started, then stopped. Her medical training told her this was impossible, but the evidence was right in front of her. "How am I still alive?" Marcus finished for her, wincing as the rescue team prepared to lift the beam. "To be honest, I'm not really sure myself, but my mom always said we humans are too stubborn to die easy." As they carefully moved the crushing weight off his body, Marcus gritted his teeth but never stopped talking. "You know what the funny thing is? I was just thinking about taking a vacation next week. Maybe somewhere peaceful, like a nice quiet space station with no exploding equipment." The medical team worked quickly to stabilize him, but every scan they took showed injuries that should have been fatal. His spine appeared to be damaged. Several organs showed signs of severe trauma, and the blood loss alone should have killed him. Yet Marcus Chen continued to breathe, to think, and impossibly, to smile. "Well," he said as they loaded him onto the medical transport, "at least I'll have an interesting story to tell at the next family reunion." Dr. Kethara looked at her team, seeing the same confusion and amazement in their faces that she felt. They had just witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about biology and survival. As they rushed toward the medical bay, one thought kept running through her mind. What exactly were these humans made of? The medical bay filled with the soft hum of advanced healing equipment as Dr. Kethara's team worked frantically around Marcus Chen. Every scanner in the room was focused on the human, and every reading defied medical logic. "Blood pressure is dangerously low," announced Dr. Veltar, his 8 legs moving quickly between different monitoring stations. "Heart rate is irregular. Oxygen levels are critical." "Yet he's still conscious," Dr. Zixanil observed, his gaseous form hovering near the examination table. "This makes no sense." Marcus lay on the bio-bed, surrounded by alien medical equipment that hummed and beeped constantly. His body was covered with temporary healing patches and diagnostic sensors. Despite the obvious pain he was in, he kept trying to look around the room with curious eyes. "Wow," he said weakly. "This place looks like something out of a science fiction movie. That's a really cool scanner you've got there, Doc." Dr. Kethara's crystal body flickered with confusion as she reviewed the latest scan results. "Mr. Chen, I need you to understand something. According to every medical database we have, you should not be alive right now." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Marcus replied with a painful grin. "Back in college, I fell off a 3-story building during a rock climbing accident." The doctor said the same thing then. The alien medical team exchanged worried glances. This human was treating near-fatal injuries like they were minor inconveniences. "Let's start with the obvious problems," Kethara said, projecting a holographic image of Marcus's skeleton above the bed. "You have 17 broken bones, including significant damage to your spine." The hologram showed his skeleton lit up with red markers indicating fractures and breaks. To any other species, this would mean immediate paralysis and death. "Your internal organs show massive trauma," she continued, switching to a display of his internal systems. "Your liver is damaged, your left lung is collapsed, and your kidneys are barely functioning." Marcus studied the display with interest. That's pretty bad. But hey, I've still got one good lung, right? That's something." Dr. Zixnil's form rippled with disbelief. "How are you not screaming in agony? These injuries should cause unbearable pain." "Oh, it definitely hurts," Marcus admitted, wincing as he tried to shift position. "But pain is just your body's way of telling you something's wrong. Since I already know something's wrong, I don't need to listen to it that carefully." Kethara had been a doctor for over 2 centuries, but she had never encountered anything like this. She pulled up comparative data from her medical files. "When a Vorthax suffers spinal damage, we enter a crystalline stasis to prevent further injury," she explained. Etherians disperse their consciousness across their gas form to avoid pain. Saurians have redundant nervous systems, but even they would be unconscious from these injuries. Different species, different solutions, Marcus said thoughtfully. Humans just learned to cope with pain and keep going. Had to, really. Our planet wasn't very forgiving. As the team worked to stabilize his condition, Marcus began sharing stories about human resilience. Between medical procedures that should have required heavy sedation, he talked about his species' history. There was this guy named Phineas Gage, Marcus said while Dr. Veltar carefully realigned his broken ribs. Back in the 1800s on Earth, he was working with explosives when a metal rod shot through his brain. 3 feet long, over an inch thick. The medical team paused their work to listen. Dr. Kethara's crystal form dimmed with sympathy. That must have been a terrible way to die. Oh, he didn't die, Marcus continued casually. He lived for another 12 years. Kept working, got married, had kids. The rod destroyed part of his brain, but he just adapted to work around it. Silence filled the medical bay. Dr. Zixneel's gaseous form contracted into a tight sphere, a sign of extreme shock among his people. You're telling us, Veltar said slowly, that a human survived having a metal rod shot completely through his brain? Yep, and he wasn't even the most extreme case. There was this other guy, Aaron Ralston, who got trapped under a boulder while hiking alone. After 5 days, he cut off his own arm with a dull knife, then walked 6 miles to get help. The alien doctors stopped what they were doing entirely now. This was beyond their understanding of biology. He amputated his own limb, Kethara asked weakly. With a pocket knife, Marcus confirmed. Then he rappelled down a cliff one-handed and hiked through the desert until he found help. Doctors said he lost so much blood that he should have died 3 times over, but he just kept going. Dr. Zixneel drifted closer to the bed. Your species regularly survives injuries that would kill any other known life form? Well, not regularly, Marcus said with a laugh that turned into a cough. But more often than you'd think. Humans are really hard to kill permanently. We're like those old Earth toys that bounce back up no matter how many times you knock them down. As the hours passed, the medical team made a disturbing discovery. Marcus wasn't just surviving his injuries, he was actually healing. Slowly, impossibly, but genuinely healing. His neural pathways are rerouting around the spinal damage, Kethara observed, staring at her scanner readings in amazement. His brain is literally rewiring itself to work around the injury. And look at this, Veltar added, pointing to another display. His bone marrow is increasing production despite the damage. His white blood cell count is rising to fight infection. Most shocking of all was Marcus's attitude. While other species would be focused entirely on survival, he seemed more concerned about his shipmates. Is everyone else okay? He asked for the 10th time. The explosion was pretty big. Nobody else got hurt, right? Everyone else is fine, Kethara assured him. You took the worst of it. Good, that's good, Marcus said, relaxing slightly. I was the senior engineer on duty, so it was my job to make sure the systems were safe. Glad nobody else paid for my mistake. Dr. Zixneel's form brightened with realization. You're taking responsibility for an accident that nearly killed you? Well, yeah. That's what engineers do. We solve problems and keep people safe. Sometimes that means getting between the problem and the people. The medical team worked through the night, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. They discovered that human biology wasn't just durable, it was adaptive. Marcus's body was constantly adjusting to the damage, finding new ways to function despite catastrophic injuries. Your cardiovascular system has developed new pathways around the damaged areas, Kethara reported during the early morning hours. Your nervous system is establishing alternate routes for nerve signals. It's like your body is rebuilding itself while we watch. Humans are pretty good at adapting, Marcus said sleepily. We had to be. Earth threw everything at us, ice ages, volcanoes, plagues, predators. The ones who couldn't adapt didn't make it. As dawn approached in the ship's artificial day cycle, Dr. Kethara found herself fundamentally questioning everything she thought she knew about medicine and biology. Mr. Chen, she said quietly, your species isn't primitive at all, is it? Marcus managed a weak but genuine smile. Depends on how you define primitive, Doc. We might not have fancy crystal bodies or the ability to turn into gas, but we've got something else. What's that? We just refuse to quit. 3 days had passed since the accident, and Dr. Kethera found herself spending more time studying Marcus Chen than any other patient in her long career. The human should have been dead, should have been in unbearable agony, should have been completely helpless. Instead, he was telling jokes and asking about getting back to work. The fascinating thing, she explained to her colleague, Dr. Zixnell, is that his body doesn't just endure damage, it treats it as a temporary inconvenience. They stood outside Marcus's room, reviewing the latest scan results. Every day brought new impossibilities. His spine was slowly reconnecting damaged pathways. His organs were healing at rates that defied physics. His broken bones were mending with unusual speed. Has he complained about the pain even once? Zixnell asked, his gaseous form rippling with curiosity. Only when we ask him directly about it, Kethara replied, and even then he rates it as not too bad or could be worse. Yesterday he compared it to something called a hangover. Inside the room, Marcus was entertaining Dr. Veltar with stories about human medical history. The spider-like doctor's 8 eyes were wide with fascination and horror. So this human female, Julie, was trapped in her car after a terrible crash, Marcus was saying. Both legs were crushed, she had internal bleeding, and she was stuck upside down for 6 hours before rescue teams found her. She must have died from the trauma, Veltar assumed sadly. Nope, Marcus grinned. She stayed conscious the whole time, talking to the rescue workers to keep their spirits up. She was more worried about them getting upset than about her own injuries. They said she was cracking jokes right up until they got her to the hospital. Veltar's mandibles clicked with disbelief. She was comforting her rescuers while dying. She wasn't dying, Marcus corrected. She was just really hurt. Big difference. Julie recovered completely and went back to work as a firefighter 6 months later. Said the experience taught her that humans are tougher than they think. Dr. Kethera entered the room, carrying a data pad full of test results. Mr. Chen, I need to ask you some questions about human biology. Sure thing, Doc. Though I should warn you, I barely passed biology class. I'm better with engines than anatomy. Kethara projected a holographic display showing comparative healing rates. We've been studying your recovery process. It's unlike anything in our medical databases. The display showed healing timelines for various species. Forthite crystal structures could regrow damaged sections in weeks. Etherian gas beings could reform their bodies in days. Plant-like Sylvari could regrow limbs given months of proper care. Humans, she continued, appear to heal through sheer determination. Marcus laughed, which turned into a small cough. That's not really how it works, Doc. We heal because we have to. Our bodies are designed for it. But the pain tolerance alone is remarkable, Dr. Zixnell observed, drifting into the room. We had to recalibrate our pain assessment scales after studying you. Pain is just information, Marcus explained. It tells you something's wrong, but once you know that, you can choose how much attention to give it. My great-grandmother used to say that pain is like a smoke alarm, useful when there's actually a fire, but you don't have to listen to it every second. Kethara consulted her datapad. Tell me about this great-grandmother. Was she also unusually resilient? Marcus's expression brightened. Oh, Grandma Rose was something else. She lived through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, raised 7 kids, and worked as a nurse until she was 75. When she was 82, she fell down a flight of stairs and broke her hip. That must have been the end of her active life, Veltar assumed. Are you kidding? She was back on her feet in 6 weeks, complaining that the hospital food was terrible, and the nurses didn't work hard enough. She lived to be 98 and only slowed down in the last month of her life. The alien medical team exchanged glances. This was becoming a pattern. Every human story Marcus told involved someone surviving something that should have been fatal. Is your entire species like this? Dr. Kethara asked carefully. Marcus considered the question seriously. Well, not everyone's the same. Some people are definitely tougher than others. But yeah, humans in general are pretty hard to keep down. We had to be. What do you mean? Zixnell inquired. Earth wasn't exactly a gentle place to evolve, Marcus explained. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanoes that blocked out the sun. Diseases that killed millions. Giant predators that saw us as snack food. The humans who survived were the ones who could take a beating and keep going. Dr. Kethara was taking notes rapidly. So your resilience is an evolutionary adaptation? Partly, but it's also cultural, Marcus said. We tell stories about people who overcome impossible odds. We celebrate survivors. We teach our kids that giving up isn't an option. He shifted slightly in the bed, wincing but pushing through the discomfort. There's this saying we have, when life knocks you down, get back up. It's not just motivational talk, it's how we're wired. Over the following days, Marcus shared more stories. Each one revealed something new about human nature that amazed the alien medical team. He told them about Ernest Shackleton, who led his crew to safety after being trapped in Antarctic ice for months. About Stephen Hawking, who made revolutionary discoveries while his body was failing. About countless ordinary people who faced extraordinary challenges and simply refused to surrender. The thing about humans, Marcus explained during one of his daily examinations, is that we're really good at adapting to bad situations. Not just physically, but mentally too. How so? Dr. Veltar asked while checking his healing bones. Well, when something goes wrong, we don't just accept it. We look for ways around it. Can't walk? Find a way to get around anyway. Lost an arm? Learn to use the other one. Can't see? Develop better hearing. We're problem solvers. Dr. Cathara had been studying Marcus for a week now, and she was beginning to understand something profound about humans. Your species doesn't just endure hardship, you grow stronger from it. Exactly, Marcus said excitedly, then winced as the movement pulled at his healing ribs. Every challenge teaches us something. Every time we overcome something difficult, we prove to ourselves that we can do it again. But surely there are limits, Zixnil pointed out. No species can survive everything. Marcus grew thoughtful. Of course there are limits. Humans die just like everyone else, but we tend to push those limits pretty far before we accept them. He paused, looking out the window at the stars. My dad used to say that the difference between humans and other species isn't that we're stronger or smarter or faster. It's that when we hit a wall, our first instinct isn't to find a way around it. It's to figure out how to go through it. Dr. Cathara felt her understanding of biology shifting fundamentally. These weren't primitive beings who had accidentally stumbled into space travel. They were the product of millions of years of evolutionary pressure that had created something unprecedented in the galaxy. Mr. Chen, she said slowly, I don't think your species is primitive at all. I think you might be the most advanced survival machines in known space. Marcus grinned, that same impossible smile he'd worn while crushed under tons of debris. Thanks, Doc, though I prefer to think of us as really stubborn. 2 weeks after the accident, Dr. Cathara called an emergency meeting with the ship's senior medical staff. The conference room filled with representatives from every major species in the galactic medical community. Crystalline Vorthax, gaseous Etherians, plant-like Silvari, spider-like arachnoids, and reptilian saurians all gathered to hear her presentation. Colleagues, she began, her crystal body glowing with excitement. What we've learned about human biology changes everything we thought we knew about survival and evolution. She activated the room's holographic display, showing detailed scans of Marcus Chen's recovery progress. 2 weeks ago, this human suffered injuries that should have killed him instantly. Today, he's asking when he can return to duty. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled doctors. Dr. Silanus, a towering plant being, rustled her leaves nervously. Surely the scans are mistaken. No organic being could survive such trauma. That's what we all believed. Dr. Zixnil interjected, his gaseous form shimmering. But we've been observing him continuously. The human isn't just surviving, he's thriving. Cathara changed the display to show comparative healing rates. Watch this progression carefully. Day 1. Massive spinal damage, multiple organ failures, extensive bone fractures. Day 7. Neural pathways rerouting around damage, organs beginning to regenerate, bones showing accelerated healing. The room fell silent as the medical professionals studied the impossible data. Day 14, she continued. Full mobility restored, organ function at 80% of normal. Bone density actually stronger than before the injury. Dr. Veltar, who had been monitoring Marcus daily, added his observations. The most remarkable aspect isn't the physical healing. It's his psychological response. He treats potentially fatal injuries as minor inconveniences. Chief Medical Officer Zarthek, an ancient Saurian with decades of experience, leaned forward with interest. Explain this psychological component. Cathara pulled up audio recordings of her conversations with Marcus. Listen to his responses when we inform him about the severity of his injuries. Marcus's voice filled the room. 17 broken bones. Wow, that's a lot. But hey, at least they're all still attached, right? I had a friend who lost his leg in a motorcycle accident, and he said the hardest part was remembering not to try to scratch it. The assembled doctors stared in amazement. Dr. Sil-Anis's leaves turned a pale green, indicating shock among her species. He's making jokes about severe trauma? Constantly, Veltar confirmed. Yesterday, while we were repairing damage to his liver, he asked if we could add some improvements while we were in there. He suggested making it more efficient so he could process coffee better. Cathara continued her presentation. This led us to investigate human evolutionary history. What we discovered explains everything. The display changed to show Earth, a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful. This is the human homeworld. At first glance, it appears to be a standard life-supporting planet. But look deeper. New data overlaid the planet image, showing atmospheric composition, gravity levels, weather patterns, and geological activity. Oxygen levels that would be toxic to most species. Gravity strong enough to crush smaller life forms. Weather systems capable of producing winds that exceed the speed of sound. But that's not the worst of it, Dr. Zixnil added grimly. Show them the biological survey. The display shifted to show Earth's ecosystem. Massive predators with crushing jaws. Venomous creatures whose toxins could kill within minutes. Microscopic organisms that could devastate entire populations. Everything on this planet was designed to kill, Cathara explained. The plants are poisonous, the animals are predatory, the weather is violent, and the geology is unstable. It's not a world that supports life. It's a world that challenges life to survive. Dr. Zarthek's reptilian eyes widened. How did any species evolve intelligence under such conditions? By becoming the ultimate survivors, Cathara replied. Humans didn't just adapt to hostile conditions, they were forged by them. Every generation that survived was stronger, tougher, and more resilient than the last. She showed comparative evolutionary data. Most intelligent species evolved on worlds where cooperation and efficiency were the keys to survival. Humans evolved on a world where the ability to endure catastrophic damage and continue functioning was the difference between life and death. Dr. Sil-Anis rustled thoughtfully. So their primitive biology is actually a sophisticated survival system? Exactly, Veltar confirmed. What we interpreted as fragility is actually redundancy. Humans can lose significant portions of their brain function and adapt. They can survive with damaged organs, broken bones, even severed limbs. Cathara brought up a new set of data. But the most remarkable adaptation is psychological. Humans have evolved to find hope and even humor in the darkest situations. She played more audio of Marcus discussing his recovery. You know, this whole experience has given me a new perspective. I always worried about small problems at work, but now I realize that as long as I can still think and talk and make bad jokes, everything else is just details. The room was completely silent now. These advanced beings, with their efficient healing and sophisticated biology, were witnessing something unprecedented. We've been approaching this wrong, Cathara continued. We assumed that advanced evolution meant eliminating weaknesses. Humans took the opposite approach. They embraced damage and learned to function through it. Dr. Zarthek spoke slowly. You're saying that human primitiveness is actually the most advanced survival adaptation in known space. Think about it, Dr. Zixnil said. Our species avoid damage through superior biology. Etherians can disperse to avoid harm. Vorthax can regrow damaged crystal structures. Silveri can regenerate from roots. But what happens when that superior biology fails? The implications hung heavy in the air. All their advanced healing meant nothing if the damage was too severe for their specialized systems to handle. Humans, Cathara said, evolved to survive when everything goes wrong. They're not just tough, they're anti-fragile. Damage makes them stronger. Trauma teaches them resilience. And pain becomes just another form of information to process. She brought up one final display, a projection of Marcus Chen as he was now, walking around the medical bay, helping to reorganize equipment while his body continued healing. 2 weeks ago, we thought we were observing a tragic accident involving a primitive species. What we actually witnessed was the most sophisticated survival organism in the galaxy, doing exactly what it was designed to do, refusing to die, adapting to damage, and finding ways to thrive despite catastrophic setbacks. Dr. Veltar added the final observation that had shaken them all. Yesterday I asked him if he was afraid of returning to engineering work after such a serious accident. He said, "Doc, getting hurt just means I learned something new. Now I know exactly how much punishment my body can take and still function. That's not scary, that's useful information." The assembled medical professionals sat in stunned silence, processing the realization that they had encountered something entirely new, a species that had evolved not to avoid death, but to survive it. Dr. Zarthek finally spoke for all of them. "We're not treating a patient. We're studying the most successful predator in the galaxy, one that preys on extinction itself." 6 weeks after the accident that should have killed him, Marcus Chen reported for duty with a spring in his step and a smile on his face. Nearly 40% of his body now contained cybernetic replacements where the original organs had been too damaged to fully heal. But he moved with the confidence of someone who had never been injured at all. "Morning. Dr. Kethara," he called cheerfully as he passed the medical bay. "Thanks again for all the excellent work. These new parts you gave me are actually better than the originals." Dr. Kethara watched him go, still amazed by what she had witnessed. In 6 weeks, Marcus had gone from near death to full duty, and somehow he was happier than before the accident. Her crystal body sparkled with wonder as she considered how much their understanding of medicine had changed. The door chimed, and Dr. Zixneal drifted into the medical bay. "The Galactic Medical Council wants to hear our full report next week," he announced. "They're calling it the most significant biological discovery in recorded history. Are you ready for the presentation?" Kethara asked. "I think so," Zixneal replied, though his gaseous form rippled with nervousness, "though I'm not sure they'll believe what we tell them." Their research had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed survival, resilience, and evolution. The data they had collected from studying Marcus would revolutionize medical practice across hundreds of worlds. "Dr. Kethara," came a voice from the communication system. "Could you come to Training Bay 7? We have some new students who would like to meet you." She made her way to the training facility, wondering what new developments awaited. What she found there made her crystal structure brighten with delight. Marcus stood in front of a group of young alien medical students, demonstrating basic emergency procedures. His audience included representatives from every major species: young Vorthax with crystal bodies that gleamed with curiosity, gaseous Etherian students whose forms shifted with interest, and others from across the galaxy. "The first thing you need to understand about human emergency medicine," Marcus was saying, "is that we operate on different principles than most species. While your people focus on preventing damage, we focus on functioning despite damage." A young arachnoid student raised 2 of her 8 legs. "But how do you determine if the damage is too severe to continue?" Marcus grinned. "Great question. The general rule is if they're still complaining, they're probably fine. Humans will complain until the heat death of the universe. It's when they stop complaining that you need to worry." The students made careful notes, though several seemed confused by the concept. "Let me give you an example," Marcus continued, rolling up his sleeve to show the junction where his organic arm met the cybernetic replacement. "When this arm was crushed in the accident, my first thought wasn't 'I'm going to die.' It was, well, this is inconvenient. But the pain must have been excruciating," observed a young Silvari, her leaves rustling with sympathy. "Oh, it definitely hurt," Marcus agreed. "But pain is just your body's way of saying pay attention to this. Once you've paid attention and figured out what's wrong, you can choose how much energy to spend on the pain versus how much to spend on solving the problem." Dr. Kethara entered the room quietly, not wanting to interrupt the lesson. Marcus noticed her and waved. "Dr. Kethara here saved my life," he told the students. "But more than that, she learned something important about humans that she can teach all of you." "What did you learn, Doctor?" asked an Etherian student, their gaseous form brightening with curiosity. Kethara moved to the front of the group. "I learned that what we considered human weakness is actually their greatest strength. Humans don't avoid damage. They survive it, adapt to it, and become stronger because of it." She activated a holographic display showing comparative survival statistics. "Since we began applying human emergency medicine principles to our other patients, survival rates have increased by 300% across all species." The students stared at the data in amazement. Marcus nodded approvingly. "See, the thing is, every species can benefit from thinking like a human in an emergency. Instead of focusing on what's damaged, focus on what's still working. Instead of trying to fix everything perfectly, prioritize keeping the patient functional. But what about species that don't have human pain tolerance? Asked the young arachnoid. That's where it gets interesting, Marcus said. You don't need to feel less pain. You just need to approach it differently. Pain is information. The question isn't how do I make this stop hurting, but what is this pain telling me and what do I need to do about it? Dr. Zixenil drifted into the room, carrying a data pad with the latest medical reports. Marcus, you might want to see this. We just received results from the test programs on 12 different worlds. Marcus took the pad and whistled softly. Wow. Emergency survival rates up by 400% on Vorthak Prime. Trauma recovery times cut in half on the Etherian homeworld. He looked up with genuine pride. This is incredible. What's incredible, Cathara said, is that we had to learn survival techniques from a species we thought was primitive. One of the students, a young Saurian, raised her hand. Mr. Chen, how do humans stay positive during serious injuries? Our species enters a pain-induced hibernation state to avoid psychological trauma. Marcus considered the question seriously. That's actually a really important part of human survival strategy. We've learned that your mental state affects your physical healing. If you give up mentally, your body follows. So we tell jokes, we share stories, we focus on the people we care about. Even when you're dying? The student asked. Especially when we're dying, Marcus replied. Some of the bravest, funniest, most inspiring humans I've ever heard about were people facing death. They used humor and hope as weapons against despair. He paused, looking around at the eager young faces. There's this old human saying, laughter is the best medicine. It sounds silly, but it's actually true. Positive emotions trigger healing responses in our bodies. Dr. Cathara pulled up another display, showing neurochemical data from Marcus's recovery. We documented this phenomenon. During his recovery, Mr. Chen's brain produced elevated levels of healing compounds whenever he laughed or told jokes. So humor is actually a medical treatment for humans? Asked the Etherian student. Among other things, Marcus confirmed. Hope, determination, love, even anger can all be healing forces if you use them right. Humans learned a long time ago that survival isn't just about biology. It's about psychology, too. As the lesson continued, Dr. Cathara found herself thinking about how much had changed since the accident. The Galactic Medical Council was already implementing new emergency protocols based on their research. Training programs across the galaxy were being redesigned to incorporate human survival techniques. But more than that, the discovery had changed how every species viewed resilience and adaptation. The humans weren't primitive survivors who had stumbled into space travel. They were the most sophisticated survival specialists the galaxy had ever produced. Before we end today's lesson, Marcus announced, I want you all to remember something important. Every species in this room has unique strengths. Vorthax can regrow damaged crystal structures. Etherians can reform their bodies from gas. Arachnoids have incredible regenerative abilities. He gestured to include everyone. But humans have proven that you don't need perfect biology to survive almost anything. You just need to refuse to give up, learn to adapt, and remember that every challenge is an opportunity to discover how strong you really are. As the students filed out, chattering excitedly about what they had learned, Dr. Cathara approached Marcus. You've become quite the teacher, she observed. Marcus grinned, that same impossible smile she had first seen while he was crushed under tons of debris. Well, I figured if we're going to share the galaxy, everyone should know how to survive in it. Besides, he added with a wink, teaching is just another form of problem solving, and humans are really good at that. Dr. Cathara's final medical log entry that day read, Subject continues to demonstrate that the most advanced survival trait in the known galaxy is not superior biology, but the simple refusal to accept defeat. Recommend immediate implementation of human survival psychology across all medical protocols. Note, subject has requested permission to return to engineering duty next week. When asked about concerns regarding future accidents, subject replied, Now I know exactly how much I can handle. That just makes me more useful, not less. End log. Outside the medical bay, Marcus Chen walked toward the engineering section, whistling an old Earth tune and already planning improvements to the ship's safety systems. After all, he thought cheerfully, He had learned exactly how much punishment the human body could take and still function. That wasn't frightening information. That was very, very useful information indeed.